You're listening to the Alex Wolf Podcast. Interesting conversations about innovation, economics, culture, and history for the independent thinkers and curious minds. I'm your host, Alex Wolf.
Hello, thank you so much for tuning in to this very special episode of the Alex Wolf Podcast. I say it's special because it is our season finale, the last episode of season 1. Thank you to all of those who have joined me in this really exciting journey. We now officially have over 24 hours of the Alex Wolf Podcast, talking about all types of fun stuff, tech philosophy, economics, Taoism, and I just want to say thank you so much. I was asked to open a tip jar a few weeks ago, and that has been open. And I just want to thank all of the donations and the people who donated. I really, really appreciate you. The Alex Wolf Podcast is 100% free, but so if you don't want to donate, that's totally fine. But if you did, the link is in the description, and I just want to thank you so much for supporting me and supporting these conversations. All right, so this episode, what did I really want to talk about this week? I really wanted to talk about how to make friends with the Matrix, aka designing your life for the 21st century, aka kind of freeing yourself from feeling weighed down by the matrix or the responsibilities. Now, before we go into the meat and potatoes, I want to first acknowledge what I mean when I say matrix, because usually when we hear the word matrix, we think about some creepy man sitting on the top of like civilization using his puppeteer strings to control us. We think of the movie, right? We think of like someone controlling us, and I totally understand that interpretation of it. But in this context, I want you to think of the Matrix less as creepy man above and more of what it is as a literal definition, which is a system of lines, a system of order. That can be a chart, that could be some type of you know, public institution. But the point is, it's some system that has rules and order. And the way I see it, it's a system of institution designed to keep order in civilization. And we're going to go into that because some people have beef with that concept. Some people don't want to have any type of lines or any type of boundary or any type of metric measuring them. And some people can see the benefit. And I think what I want this episode to be about is the fact that even if you don't want them, you're still going to have to deal with them. And if you don't, we'll talk about what happens when you don't. The last thing I want to say about Matrix is that one of my favorite ways of understanding it is through the lens of ancient Hindu philosophy, of course. And basically, it stems from this old Sanskrit word Maya, which means mother of illusion. It means a lot of different things, but Maya, yes, as in like the name Maya, Maya, it's a word that embodies, again, something kind of deceiving you. But it's a necessary deception because, again, that deception is creating order in your life. Not all the time, but so much of the ancient Hindu understanding of life is that everything under Maya is what the world really is, and that you can appreciate the illusion, you can work with the illusion, but ultimately know that it's an illusion. And so much of the harm being done with Western tech philosophy and overall pop culture and society right now is that we are more married to illusions. We take them for complete reality, and we have a less understanding of what's underneath it. So you can think about a big ocean and a fish net, right? The ocean is vast. The ocean is our reality. The ocean is the universe. The ocean is the mystery. The fish net we use, those big fish nets that we like throw and you cast over the water. How does it catch fish? It catches fish because there are lines. The lines cut through all the squiggliness of the water, all the malleable kind of formlessness of the water, and it takes stuff up. And we use lines to do that a lot. But again, a lot of the separation from us and our meaning of life is having more love and appreciation and faith in the fishnet and thinking, oh, this fishnet will give me everything. The fishnet will give you some fish, yes, but unless you understand the environment in which you are taking the fish, you're not going to have a complete understanding of what you're actually doing. So that is where we're at now, almost on every scale, is that we are more faithful to lines. We are more faithful to the illusion. We are more faithful to the matrix. Even if we hate it, we're more faithful to it by a way of keeping that as our main focus and ignoring what's beneath the net, okay? So the way I defined civilization in the context for this conversation was civilization is the way man distributes labor and responsibility amongst a body of people to produce more results with less individual effort. When you hear the word an uncivilized man, it usually has a negative connotation. But technically, the uncivilized man was still greatly sophisticated in the sense that he used his whole body, his whole intelligence to survive, right? We're talking about small clans of people, 2 maybe to 4 of people who lived nomadically, would roam around, would hunt their own stuff, would use mysterious forms of spirituality to connect themselves to the universe, who would govern themselves ultimately, and who would work for themselves, right? The issue, we're so afraid of that type of, that stage of our humanity, that all of the words we have for uncivilized man, including uncivilized man, are negative. Wild man or caveman, or it's not a compliment, right? If someone calls you a caveman, you're not going to think they're trying to compliment you. And that's important in this conversation because that type of negative bias towards who we were prior to advanced technology is revealing to our fear of our nature, right? We're not very, because we've been so domesticated, we've domesticated ourselves into this very vast, complex, institutionalized world. The idea of who we are without this is frightening. This is part of the genius of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, is he juxtaposes this overly civilized, overly domesticated man and puts it next to this quote-unquote uncivilized and basically makes a narrative out of this difference, this gap, and this fear. So the point is that somewhere along the line, humans realized they could accomplish more as far as the production of food, as far as protection, and as far as overall prosperity, if they created governments and systems of order, okay, aka civilization. They realized with bodies of people in the right roles being distributed within the bodies of people, we can all benefit in this way we could not have done if we were being caveman, nomadic, uncivilized. Civilization is probably my number one fascination because it's the foundation for innovation. Okay. Every invention that you see that has gone mainstream has changed the shape of civilization. And every time civilization changes shape, we change. We change our behavior. We change our relationships. We change our values. We change our goals. Okay? And I think that is such a beautiful difference to have with our human ancestors. But as much as I appreciate the difference, I love and I savor the sameness because, yes, we are in different environments than our ancestors of the 1800s, 1900s at this point, 1700s. And what makes our worlds different is what technology is available at these times. But what makes our worlds the same is that we are ultimately the same species. So, again, somewhere along the line, humans realized they could accomplish more by teaming up. Now, this is one of the most advanced forms of intelligence that we see being displayed on the planet, meaning people being smart enough and using their self-consciousness, right? The one thing that is allegedly different about us than every other species, that we're self-conscious, and devising literally an abstract system, meaning something that's not there. We formulated this idea of like, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this. And if we all do this, then we get more that. We get more food, we get more protection, blah, blah, blah. So when these responsibilities are flattened out of this uncivilized man, we can call him a shaman. We can call him a spiritual man. He's the man in the mountains who knows more than any of me or you know, right? Because he has this whole different understanding of the universe. But when we flatten him and his roles and his responsibilities, it's going to flatten in 4 different directions. You ready? One is going to be the spiritual direction, meaning the priests, the church. We flatten his responsibilities and we say, okay, his spirituality is a main factor in his understanding of how to make this world work, how to find the food, how to understand the seasons, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to take that knowledge and we're going to institutionalize it into a church or a temple or some kind of spiritual place where there are spiritual people who ordain each other, and we're going to try to keep that going. And that's another big difference between the uncivilized man and the civilized, is the spiritual uncivilized man does not, he receives his spiritual understanding through not another person, but through nature. But when civilization comes, we start to, distribute that understanding from person to person. It's a pretty big distinction. Okay, so that's one direction. The other direction is government. Who's going to decide what's lawful? Who's going to protect injustice? Before, the uncivilized man, if you mess with him, he's going to figure out a way to create justice. Well, now that we're doing this whole civilization thing, we're going to reserve the justice preservation to a judge. People hear judge, people hear lawyer, and they think of our lawyers. They think of these huge courts and today. But you have to understand, these roles are ancient. Okay? So, even small tribes, even small communities, they have judges. They have some counsel to, advise so that some type of harmony and integrity remains within this community. Okay, so that's the second section. The third is what you could call the commoner or the merchant. These are basically the people who facilitate trade, meaning the business owners, the shop owners, You know, one dude has a bunch of corn, the other dude has a bunch of cattle, and they are in charge of producing this. So that is the third section. And again, obviously, the quote unquote uncivilized man knew how to he knew how to get these resources for himself. The fourth one, when you flatten out these responsibilities, the fourth section you're going to get is the serfs, or the laborers, or the slaves, depending on what civilization we're talking about. And these are the people who, they do the work, literally. They do the laboring. So you might have the person who sells the corn, but who's actually farming it? Who's actually, making sure the seeds are laid properly and the stuff is being tended to? Well, that's going to be the laborers. So these are the four sections. And before civilization, man was pretty much doing all of this himself. But he realized, okay, I can create space for things I didn't know were possible, or I didn't even think about, if I somehow immerse myself in this team in which these responsibilities are distributed. Okay. Most civilizations are going to have these four groups. Most of them. It doesn't matter if it's capitalist or not. This is the groups you're going to have. So if you organize these groups on a piece of paper, what you will get is 4 sections. In other words, a cross. Okay? You can think about the cross roads in a town. What makes a town is 2 roads meet each other. And on that crossroads, you have the church, and you have the government building, and you have the merchants, and you have the land that's being tended to, right? That's all that's the beginning of a town, is a cross. And or the beginning of a civilization is a cross. And again, you can think about the crossroads in a town, or you can think about the cross that people wear around their neck, the Christian cross. And Alan Watts' interpretation about Christ being crucified on the cross is interesting, because the way he interprets it, and disclaimer, I know everyone has different interpretations, and I respect all, different interpretations. But for this one in particular, he talks about how Christ being crucified on the cross is a symbol, or there are kind of 2 symbols happening at once. One is Christ, obviously, he understands as the symbol of this shaman we're talking about, the symbol of this uncivilized man, this symbol of, and again, uncivilized not meaning negative, just meaning he doesn't have this whole institution yet. He's just him, and he has a different understanding of nature, of life, of everything, right? And it is man at his most natural, individualistic state. And he is being crucified on a cross. Think about it. What is that cross representing? It's representing these classes, these groups. He's being crucified in the name of this collective organization. Okay? So, and if you think about that, one of the other interesting things about Eastern philosophy is that most of our interpretations of the world are through our lines, through our matrices. So we need forms of measurements. We need to say this is this many inches, this is this much percent, this is this much money, right? We need the measurement. But ultimately, underneath, like I was mentioning about Maya, underneath those measurements are very vast and sometimes incalculable movement. And again, like, how do you measure the ocean, right? It's kind of hard. So when we think about the cross is humanity saying, we need these lines, y'all. If we're going to create this order, like, you literally need to be nailed to this cross in order for this to work. Because that intersection, that X or that T, right? I want you to really envision that cross. You know, one of the things Alan Watts says is everything is squiggly. And the only place you're going to see lines is humans, right? So that intersection of the horizontal line going with the vertical line, if you look around, it's everywhere, right? It's your room, your phone, your laptop, everything is going to, all the human-made stuff is going to have this intersection of this crossroads. And again, his interpretation was that Christ or Christ consciousness, this shamanic, this different stage of our species, is now going to crucify himself in the name of this rigidity and this order, because he understands that this order can bring more than just all of us doing our own thing, all of us living like that. A little controversial. So I that changed everything for me, because I went from seeing crosses on people's chests, from seeing like a Christian symbol, to it being this like symbol, like this commitment to this matrix. You know, I don't think that's done consciously for many folks, but it's kind of like wearing that cross or having that cross on. You know, you think about the Pope and how he has that big hat with the cross on the top, or that big staff that's in the shape of a cross. It's like there was a commitment to and this like faith to what this order can do, and people just really got attached to it, which is fine. But you can see clearly still that even if you're not Christian, after years of this type of belief and this thought process, you might not be married to the cross, but you're married to some matrix, most likely, some type of measurement. It could be as something as cool as, you know, light years, or it could be something as shallow as Instagram likes, right? But you're gonna be, you're holding on tightly to some intersection, to some cross. And it's interesting because basically, again, what this symbol is saying is, yes, a part of him dies so that civilization can operate. Civilization needs that shaman part of our humanity to go away. Maybe you can have it in a minority. And it's interesting because, again, there are traditions that after you have contributed good years to your role and your responsibilities, you actually do have the option to leave civilization and literally like become a nobody. That's almost the goal. Is retirement actually is very fascinating on an anthropological level, because there are very different ways to deal with the last life stage, in which you might not be able to produce anything productively, meaning like for the economy. And some civilizations see that and they say, oh, you know, we want you to relax. And some civilizations see that and there's some brutal ones. There's one, I believe it was in Paraguay. There was some anthropologists there, and they literally would just kill older people once they couldn't like do anything, which sounds really brutal and crazy to us because, you know, that's not like a common practice. Maybe not directly, maybe indirectly that happens here. But anyway, what I'm saying is that there's different ways to understand, okay, what do you do when you're done with your identity? What do you do when you're done with your ego? What do you do when you're done with your name and who you are? Is there a place for you to go? And again, what I was mentioning is that there are societies that say, you can, you're done. Thank you for your work. You can go be a nobody. Like, go in the forest and go feel your Christ consciousness or your shamanic connection, or again, just your uncivilized connection. Feel your connection to the universe. Okay. So, but this part of him dies, and that feeling of being nailed to the cross, you're nailed to the lines. That is usually this burden we feel from the Matrix. That is usually the, do I have to get a job? Do I really have to make money? You know, do I really have to pay taxes? Do I really have to be responsible? And a lot of that language is very common right now for millennials, right? We don't want to adult, or we're very insulted by this rigidity that we're feeling. Because the artist in us, or the uncivilized shamanic part of us, wants to roam free from rules, wants to roam free from lines. And it can feel weighed down, and yes, even crucified by this cross, by this system of order. Sometimes the order in a civilization is harmonious. Sometimes the order is corrupt. And one thing for sure is that right now, since our institutions are very large and very complex, bigger than they've ever been before, it's really easy to get caught up in some spoke, some line, some, before where maybe it was a simplistic wheel, now it's this wheel with a bunch of little lines. And you're like, you can get caught up like a web. If you think of civilization as a hamster wheel, and it has these 4 spikes, and you have to jump over each spike to not get hurt. And after a while, all the jumping can get really exhausting. So, of course, you start to resent this wheel. You start to resent or rethink this whole concept of civilization. You start to wonder, could we have done it better? Or there are other things we could have done, blah, blah, blah. And so what ends up happening is that many hamsters die on the spike, so to speak. They are overwhelmed by the wheel. They are overwhelmed by the cross. They're outmastered by this order. Because, you can think about it as the social equivalent of the quote unquote poor dad in Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't know if you read it or not, but, it's basically just 2 ways to deal with this complex institution. And the poor dad basically, again, is overwhelmed by the institution. He doesn't understand why kindness isn't enough. He doesn't understand why working hard isn't enough. But the rich dad is like, oh, we see it totally opposite. Instead of me running this wheel, I'm going to build a system to run this wheel for me. And what's so ironic about how technologically advanced we've become is quite a few things, but one of them is that we're so technologically dependent that you can replace yourself as a hamster with a matrix of your own. Meaning there's a big system going round and round and round, and yeah, you can either jump in it, or you can build a system on the side and then throw that system in the bigger system, and it won't know it's not you. Because that's how robotic everything has become. And I'm going to explain that in a deeper way. But the big mistake that the overwhelmed hamsters keep falling for is they are trying to submit to the operations of the matrix themselves instead of building a system to replace them. Again, they keep thinking, can't we all just get along? Can't we just use kindness and love? Isn't that the answer? And it might be. But where we are right now, that doesn't matter, because this wheel's moving. Tax season's coming up. Rent is due. Mortgage is due. Like, So, and this is the push-pull. And I think particularly millennials have a lot of friction with this push-pull. So here's the good news, okay? The truth is that even though our matrix has become more complicated, it's actually easier than ever before to program it using your own system. And because the truth is, again, is that so many robots and computers have been made and are available at your fingertips. And many of them are actually designed to jump this hamster wheel for you if you really know what to look for. So before I go into the specifics of that, because I really think it comes down to just programming 3 different computers or 3 different robots, which I'll talk about in a second. But I'm reading from Zen in the Beat Way from Alan Watts. He has this really profound quote here where he basically says that, look, America, you're building this lavish economy, right? Where the world has never seen this before, where you can just have so many products and services. It's like a euphoria of products and services. But here's the issue is that you're creating this lavish economy, but y'all don't know how to enjoy nothing. y'all are creating this economy of leisure and pleasure. But the truth is, we as a society know very little about leisure or pleasure. And the irony is that we don't know how to really relax into leisure or pleasure because we're so busy building this economy that produces all these things that you're supposed to enjoy leisurely and for pleasure. Beautiful, beautiful paradox. So he says, this book is about the beatniks, kind of like, the poor dad, right? The poor dad is the beatniks. The beatniks are the hippie people who don't like big institution and they want to opt out. But he compares the beatniks side by side with what you would call the squares, what he calls the squares, which could be the rich dads, right? The people who just follow the rules. And he says how ultimately we're more alike than we are different. But he says the beats are simply loafing, but many solid citizens are productive only in a limited sense. They are involved in the system of production only so they can go back home after work and sit passively and watch television. And I do not know whether it is better to watch the average television show or to lie on your back in some pad smoking marijuana listening to jazz. So what he's saying here is that the beatniks go, stay home and smoke weed, and the squares go home and watch television. He goes, aren't those the same? He goes, what's the competition about? Yeah, he says, what is the difference? That's the next sentence. It is only that one choice is an overt and obvious divergence from the social norm, and the other is not. But you see, here is the problem. Unless human beings can accustom themselves to the idea of being in a state of leisure, they are not going to be able to adapt themselves to the economy that they themselves are creating. Y'all, we have so much stuff. We have too much money, literally, floating in the economy, being lost because people are still trying to figure out what to do with it. Okay. We have an abundance of products and services, crazy ones. I mean, something out of a sci-fi film. 2-day shipping where you can order anything you want at the cheapest price available. Okay? Ubers and all this stuff. So he's like questioning, like, y'all don't even know that you're building this economy and you can actually rest in it, but y'all don't know how to rest in it. He says, if one has to go on producing for the sake of producing, that is like an airplane in flight. It can never hover. It must go on doing what it is doing or collapse. In a culture where everybody has to keep producing, even though plenty is produced already, all kinds of propaganda have to be generated to get people to buy up the surplus of production. Ooh, he just lifted the curtain on that one. He's saying, basically, since we already have so much and we don't know how to enjoy it, we have to make up reasons to enjoy new versions of the stuff we already have. And this is why branding has a different grasp on capital today than it did before, because it's not enough that we have shirts. Now we need entire ecosystems of beliefs behind the shirt to want the shirt. Meaning like, oh, well, that's why you pick one shirt over the other. That's why, the picture of the regular shirt and the same shirt with the Lacoste logo is different. And some people who don't like capitalism might hear this and say, that's the problem. And I think that's the sensible first reaction to have. But the reason why I can embrace his kind of he's kind of talking down, right, on branding and marketing without doing it directly. He says all types of propaganda. He's calling it propaganda. Well, let me tell you why it became propaganda, or why I don't see it as propaganda, because when we took a lot of our values, morals, and spirituality out of our culture, meaning when we replaced all of that with science, and we got so married to the cross, not the Christian cross, but the scientific cross of the matrix, that need for some type of connection, either to other people or to some higher source, that got depleted. So we were fine in every other area, and we still are, but what's missing is meaning, right? For a lot of people, what's missing is meaning. So what the market warped itself and figured out is that, oh, this society doesn't have meaning? Well, we'll create that through brands. Legitimate meaning. It's not fluff if people are paying real money to be associated with a certain group of people through a brand. They literally need some type of community, some type of connection, and commerce at this point has taken that place. Not just commerce, but again, brands. So when I say brands, I mean a set of values. Again, when we flatten the responsibility into those 4 different groups, what did we have? We had the church section, the spirituality section, right? Second, we had the government section. Third, we had the merchant section. And fourth, we had the laborer section. Well, a lot of that church that section still exists, but instead of it being priests and popes and stuff like that for a lot of us, it has turned into, y'all not gonna like this, celebrities. We worship celebrities. I don't know what happened to my Twitter, but my Twitter is a celebrity worship feed. If I spend 7 days off of Twitter, I will forget about celebrities. If I spend 7 days on Twitter, the next thing you know, every one of their moves is somehow relevant. So what the celebrities do is they act as this, from them, we understand what brands are relevant, because what do? We use the stuff they're wearing and the stuff they're buying to help us understand who we are. Well, I like this one, so I'm going to buy this one because I want to be around other people who like this too. That doesn't make us shallow at all. That is a natural human behavior that is being acted out through the market, whereas before it was being acted out through religion, or, again, obviously I know people are still religious, but you get what I'm saying. It's like there's been a switch in the majority. So we have gotten to that point. I think that that's one of the main things I've been trying to talk about is y'all advanced all this technology. Y'all advanced every other section of this. And y'all thought that you could just let go of the connection part of life, the romantic part of life, the soft part, the warm part. Y'all thought, oh, if we just invest in all these goodies, that will give us the meaning we're looking for. Well, it's not giving it to enough of us, because a lot of us are depressed. A lot of us are addicted to harmful substances. A lot of us feel like we can barely make it. Another quote he has here, which is kind of related. He says, talks about, this is funny, listen to what he says. He says, you cannot take a walk in Beverly Hills without being stopped by the police. It's such a funny sentence, because what he's saying is that we've built up civilization, right, to a point where taking a walk in a certain neighborhood is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like you will literally get stopped by the police. And he talks about how, like, the way we built roads and stuff, there's not really even a place to walk. He's like, you can't walk around this unless there's like a designated place for you to walk. But as far as like walking from the one side of this country to the other, you can't. I don't know. You can't really do it because of all like the highways and stuff. Anyway, he says, you cannot take a walk in Beverly Hills without being stopped by the police, because people down there do not walk, they drive. Therefore, if you are walking, you must be some kind of suspicious character. It is not true, in other words, that freedom depends on that kind of strength. Freedom depends on the ability of people to trust one another. If a society is incapable of that kind of trust, it is also incapable of freedom. Such a profound quote. I mean, that's really what the issue is here, is that trust allows you to let go. It allows you to not have to nail yourself to anything. But the more we try to grasp, the more we try to fit everything into lines and only lines, and not understand what's the nature of what's beneath that, the more desperate we will feel. Okay. So, I wanted to talk about those robots to program that I think you only need 3 robots. So one is you need to program, you only need to program 3 to jump those spikes. You need to program a computer to receive money. This can be your income. This can be your business. There needs to be some computer system receiving money. You need to program a computer to pay money that you owe other people. You need, bills, whatever, expenses. And you need to, but you want to program it. So again, this is different than just having a bank account. This is programming a company in a way that it receives money, right? Automatically. This is programming a computer to pay money automatically. So it's paying out automatically. And you need to program a computer, the third one, to deposit money into some type of investment account. So some type of stocks, bonds, ETFs, something like that. Or just any account where the money will grow. Those 3 computers will, if you can figure out how to program them, for your lifestyle and your goals, that can be your mechanical hamster. And you throw that hamster in the wheel, and the wheel won't even know you're not there. And that's the quote unquote rich dad point of view, and that's what Alan Watts is talking about when he's saying, you know, what's your plan to enjoy the surplus of goods and services you're making? You have no plan. Your plan is just to keep making it. But, you know, with the way the world's going, the surplus of not just the products and services, but the surplus of money that is being distributed, you have the opportunity to figure out how to enjoy some of this stuff. You know, it's interesting because I see this pop up when people hear some of my work about technology, some of my criticisms, some of my cynicism, and they're like, Alex, what should we do? Well, what's the solution? Well, what's the solutions? What's the answer? When I did attention for sale, you know, what's the answer? How can you leave this open-ended? And I'm like, what's the answer? What's the solution? I don't have a solution. What do you mean? Like, this is a 50-ton system running full speed. Like, the solution, quote unquote, if there were one, would be enjoy your time while you're here. So you mean to tell me you're going to spend the rest of this trying to, you know, interfere even more with this problem that has been created through over interference? You know, to me, I'm like, live your life. Go make a cup of coffee. Take a nap. Literally. Enjoy it. You're alive. Shit's shipping in 2 days. Order it. Go in the car. Drive. Take a trip. Like, you know, do what you can do. And, you know, they say, the Taoist point of view would say that, the number one way or most likely to change the world from destructing itself is from not trying to fix it. There is a possibility that by not trying to fix it, it will actually restore its natural order and intelligence. I should say intelligence. Because these matrices that we built, yes, they are big and they're complex, but at the same time, they're very abundant if you, again, know what to do and what to look for, and you can make friends with it, and you might as well enjoy it, because what a waste. People talk about wasting water and wasting materials and wasting, well, you waste it by not enjoying it as well. So, that's what I had to say about that. Thank you for listening to this season finale. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, your messages. And I want to know if you understand where I'm coming from with this stuff, as far as the analogies I was using about the hamster wheel, and the spikes. And, you know, we are in a very particular time, and there's a lot of stuff that is out of our control. And there's still opportunity to find peace and happiness even within all that, and to just kind of mind your business and just live your life. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for listening. All right, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Alex Wolf Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. And if you aren't already, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more resources on innovation, economics, and culture, visit alexwolf.co/newsletter and sign up for my email list. Thanks.